receiving, I just received the emails about the tutoring sessions, but I don't think I ever received anything.
So usually I send it as a response or whatever to the tutoring sessions. So if you don't have it, just let me know, because the only way you can get those YouTube links, and they have all the recordings. Share. Okay, so everybody got 0.75 with that, right?
Right.
All right, now you can see the Saunders screen again, right? Or you still see the whiteboard?
Yeah, we can see. I see the screen again.
Okay, so there's the formula down there, okay? And as you can see, it's your desired dose over your available dose times the mLs. Now, a lot of people think, oh, they just put this in to trick us. No, this is how the medication is going to come on the floor, and this is how it has to be administered. They're not trying to trick you. Let's look at this one, okay? Just because this one has a little bit, it's a little bit tricky, right? So what we have prescribed is digoxin 0.25. So that's our desired dose. Okay, what we have on hand is 0.125. So you just have to take your desired dose and divide it by what you have on hand. And in this case, you're going to multiply it times tablets, because your tablet is that vehicle that's going to bring it into the body. So it's 0.25 divided by 0.125 times 1 tablet, because that's what you have on hand.
2.
All right, did everybody get 2?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, now here comes the tricky one. Right? It looks scary. But what's the medication? What is the question saying? The nurse prepares how many mLs to administer 1 dose. So you know your answer has to be in mLs. Again, just look at what's the question asking me. All right, so it's saying that my patient is prescribed heparin 5,000 units. And what I have on hand is 10,000 units per ml. It's the same formula. So my order is for 5,000 and it's units. Okay. I have 10,000 per 1 ml. Is that what it said? Yep. So it's a simple math there. 5,000 divided by 10,000 times 1. And what'd you get?
0.5.
Is that what everybody got?
Yes.
Yes.
0.5.
So you're going to give half of an ml. See, you're rock stars. It just looks difficult. It's really not as difficult as it looks. And I do keep it simple, stupid math, because I hate math. So I don't like a lot of big formulas and a lot of messy problems. Now, let me go back into the drug quiz so I could see what else you had there. All right, let's see if you can do this one on your own, and then I'm going to move on to the next one that I want to show you. Can you see the screen with the question?
No.
How about now?
Yes.
Yes.
While you guys are calculating that, I'm going to put you on mute real quick so I can answer this phone call. Hello. About over. It'll be over. Well, it's actually over today because I got to do tutoring and all that stuff. So that's why I'm like, I'm around today. We just want to get together. Yeah, we'll just take a look at it. You might just be on the wrong tab or something. But can we do it at, let's see, I started what time? At 10:30, so I should be done 12:30, 1:30. Yep, just jump. You have my Zoom link already? $1:30. I won't have a break to eat, but that's okay. We'll just do it at 1:30. We'll be done with it, and then I'll be done with my sessions for today. All right, thanks. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so what'd you guys get?
0.6.
Okay, see, you rock stars. You got it. Don't let the question throw you off. Remember, follow what the question says first, and then go back and look at the problem. Okay, I'm going to do this one before I jump to the next one that I want to show you also, because I want to see how you guys do this. So, does everybody understand how to do this question? Read the question there. If anybody has an issue or thinks they have an issue, let me know and I'll work it out on the board first. Don't be shy. You want to be shy in the test, not now.
Oh no. So right now, so we have to convert the grams into we got to convert the grams into milligrams, correct?
Yeah, because you don't have grams on hand. You only have
Right.
milligrams on hand. So you have to convert to what you have on hand in this. Okay. And the easiest way when you're converting, okay, is to think about this. My scale is always going to look like this.
Milligrams, micrograms.
So whenever I'm going this way, okay, I'm going to have to multiply. Whenever I'm going to the right, I'm always going to have to multiply. Or I'm going to have to move my decimal point 3 places to the right. All right. So your decimal is always going to go to the right with this one. Get up here. All right. If you're going this way to the left, okay, you're always going to divide by 1,000. Or you're going to move the decimal 3 places to the left. Okay, with this one, you're going to the right. If you can always see that in your head, you'll always be able to convert. So if you have 0.2 grams, and you're going to milligrams, you're going to the right. So put your arrow that way. Right? If you had 200 milligrams and you're going to grams, you're going to the left. Okay, because you got to go this way. Maybe that makes more sense. So your decimal point is going to go this way. Okay, so you can see how easily that converts back and forth if you're going one way or the other. If you can see it in your mind like that, then you can always do these. So again, what we have is 0.2 grams, and you can just see by looking at that, if you move your decimal 3 places to the right, that's going to give you 200 milligrams. So now what your desired dose is 200 milligrams, and you're going to divide that by what you have on hand, which is 100 milligrams, right? So
Right.
2 divided by 1 is what? 2. Because you can actually eliminate the zeros there. Just simple math, okay? If that confuses you, put it all there. And this is all I'm saying. Let me put it on the whiteboard. You have 200 milligrams because that's what the 2 grams converted in. 0.2 times 1,000, okay? Or 0.2, and let's move the decimal 3 points. Okay, 1, 2, 3, and that gives us 200 milligrams. All right. What we have on hand is 100 milligrams times 1 tablet. Okay, so really these zeros cross out, and we have 2 divided by 1, which is 2. So we should be given 2 tabs, right? Is that what you got?
Yeah, I got that.
Yes.
Okay, it's just, you know, things to help you do it simpler when you're looking at it on the test, so you don't get yourself all flustered over the big numbers. All right, now I was looking for one with MEQs. Let's see if we can find one. Of course, I won't be able to find one because I want one. All right, let's just do one in my brain. I can do one from my brain, so we'll just do that. Okay, let's go back to the whiteboard. Can you see the whiteboard?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so potassium chloride, okay? When they order potassium chloride, they always give it in a rider. You can't give potassium chloride direct inject. Why?
Painful.
Yeah, but that's not the most important reason. It'll kill you because it'll cause a cardiac arrhythmia. All right. So potassium, we always give in a rider. It always has to be in a brown glass bottle. It's always a slow injection process. So, you know, you're going to give like 30 or 40 MEQs, and it'll probably be in 1,000 mLs or 100 mLs or whatever, depending on how the doctor orders it and how slow he wants to give it. Okay. So, you have 30 MEQs ordered, okay? That's what the doctor ordered, 30 MEQs. And that just stands for milliequivalents. That's all it is. All right. And what you have on hand is 40 MEQs. per, let's say, 5 mLs. All right. So how are you going to give it? It's the same thing, right? This is your doctor's order or your desired dose. And this is your dose on hand. And this is what it's suspended in, your mLs, your total mLs. So really, again, you could cross these out, and it's a simple 3 divided by 4, which we already determined earlier was something like 0.75, right? And then you multiply that times the 5.
3.75.
Okay, so
And
that's
and 30 is the desired dose, correct? That's the
correct.
order.
Your desired dose always goes on the
On
top.
top.
Yes.
All right.
All right, dudes over honeys. The dude goes on top. All right. Just a funny way to say it. Don't get offended, anybody.
I'm so offended right now.
I try to give you guys little cute ways to try to remember it. All right, because the formula is actually the key to solving these. Oh, this one I wanted to do with you guys. Okay. Can you see the question?
Yes.
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 Okay, so it's asking how many drops per minute. If you look at the question, what's it say? The nurse should regulate the roller clamp on the infusion set to deliver how many drops per minute. So it's just a lot of wording in there, but you know, this is how orders come out. So you have to be able to read the order. So if it's asking us drops per minute, then I know that my formula has to be what?
Was it, what do you mean, like divide?
Total volume
Oh, total volume. All right.
over time in minutes and it's times the drop factor. That's your formula. And as long as you can remember that, you'll always get these right. What I explained to classmates previously in these tutor sessions, if it says micro drip or micro bore or PD drip, your drop factor is always 60. Okay, because anything else is a macro drip, and all macro drips are different. They can be 10, they could be 15, they could be 20. So if it's a macro drip, they're going to have to tell you that in the problem. They won't just say it's a macro drip. But if it's a micro drip, a micro bore, or a PD drip, they'll just say micro drip, micro bore, or PD drip. They won't give you the drop factor because you're supposed to know that it's automatically 60. Okay, so this question says, we have 50 mLs of solution to be administered over 30 minutes, and what is our drop factor? So I told you, in order to do these, what do you need?
As far as what, the total volume, right?
Total volume over the total time in minutes times the drop factor. So this one's pretty easy because everything's already there for you. So you have 50 mLs, your volume is always going to be in mLs. And you have 50. It just told you that in the statement. You're giving it over 30 minutes, so your time is already in minutes. Okay? And it's saying that there's a drop factor of 10. So if we use that equation I just gave you,
16.6.
okay, our total volume is 50 mLs.
Mhm.
Our time is 30 minutes. And our drop factor was what?
10.
10. So again, you could drop these 5 divided by 3 times 10, or you can do the whole thing if that makes it easier for you. It's whatever. There's no right or wrong way of doing it. So whatever makes it easier for you. All right. So somebody just gave us an answer. And it was 16.7, right? Or 16.6. If you were rounding up to the nearest tenth, it would be 16.7. All right. Now, when you look at numbers and it's asking you, just so you guys understand this, let's say this is my number. Okay, so this, you guys can see the whiteboard, right?
Right.
Yes.
This 6 right here is the 10th place, okay? This 6 right here is the 100th place. So if you're rounding to the 10th place, this number in the 100th place determines what that number in the 10th place is going to be. All right, so you see this number is a 6. So that would make this number actually a 7. So if I were rounding to the nearest 10th, my answer would be 16.7. Now, if we look at the bottom number, if I was rounding to the nearest 10th, my answer would be 16.5 because the number in the 100th place is less than a 5. So if it's less than a 5, meaning if it's a 4 or less, this number doesn't change. All right, if it's a 5 or higher, then it changes that number. If I'm rounding to a whole number, then I go by the number in the 10th spot. So if I were rounding this 16.5 to a whole number, my answer would be 17 because that is a 5. So if it's 5 or higher, the same thing for 16.6, my answer would be 17 if I were rounding to a whole number. Now, if this were a 4, and I were rounding to a whole number, this would remain 16 because that's less than 5, okay? Everybody understand that?
Yes.
So when you read the question, make sure it doesn't tell you to round, because if it does, you have to follow the rules. And if it doesn't tell you to round, then look at the rounding rules, which are on your resources page in your module. And it tells you how to round. So I would have those printed out when I'm doing my math to know which way I'm supposed to go, but you still want to read what the question also states. Oh, this is the one I was looking for. Of course it pops up now. Let's see if you can do this one on your own. Again, read what the question asks you first.
I just see your whiteboard.
All right, what'd you get?
And
10, correct. Okay, see, you're rock stars. You got it. Now, next one we're going to do is a reconstitution, because I know that was on there also. So let me see if I can find a reconstitution on here. Okay, so I'll do it without that. And then, of course, the next question will be one. Okay, so the doctor ordered Rocephin. Can you see the whiteboard?
Yes.
Yes.
So he ordered Rocephin 100 milligrams. Your thing says add 2.3 mLs of water to make Rocephin 1 gram per 3 mLs. Okay. Now, when it says that, what that means is that this is going to be the dose now that you have on hand, because that's what you just made, right?
Okay.
So that's what you have on hand. What you have ordered is 100 milligrams. Okay. So you have ordered 100 milligrams, and what you have on hand is 1 gram per 3 mLs. So first thing you got to do is what? You got to convert to what you have on hand, right? You have 1 gram per 3 mLs on hand. In order to convert 100 milligrams into a gram, what are you going to do?
Move your decimal.
Or divide by 1,000, right?
Divide by 1,000.
Okay, so 100 divided by 1,000 is what?
0.1.
0.1.
So we have here, instead of 1 milligram, okay, we have 0.1 grams, because our dosages have to be in the same thing, right? In order to do that math. So 0.1 divided by 1 times 3.
Uh, 0.3.
0.3. That should be your answer. And it's mLs, right? Because that's what you're giving.
Can we do another one of them?
Yes. And I'm actually going to send you, I'll send you my reconstitution package. I have a package that goes through reconstitution with you guys, and it has some practice questions on there. Okay, so let's see now if we can find another one. Can't believe there's not a reconstitution on this one. Okay. Oh, but I want to do that one. Okay. All right. So the physician orders 500 milligrams of Rocephin. All right. And the directions say add 2.6 mLs of water to make a 2 gram per 1 ml dose. All right, so now, what's the formula you're going to use for this?
That's a shame. I forgot.
Desired over have, right?
Right.
Okay, so our desired dose is 500 milligrams. What we have on hand is 2 grams per 1 ml. Now we have to convert to the 2 grams because that's what we have on hand, right? We have to convert to the grams. So 500 milligrams converted to grams is what? We're either going to do what?
We're moving to the right.
Or we're going to,
Multiply.
nope, we're
Darn
moving
it,
to the
divide,
left,
divide.
or we're going to divide, right?
Right.
To the left. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we have 0.5 grams. Is that what you got?
Yep.
So 0.5 divided by 2 times 1.
.2.
Okay, you should have got 0.25 or 0.2 if we were rounding it. Actually, it would be 0.3 because if we were rounding it to the nearest tenth, it would have to go up. All right, but 0.25 is what you should have got on the calculation without the round. Did anybody not get that? Now, the reason why this is what you have on hand, okay, is because when you added the 2.6 mLs, that's what you got. All right, so it's already telling you what you have on hand. When you reconstitute something, that's all it's doing. Let me see if I can find that.
So again, so with the reconstitution, it's the desired dose.
Well,
over-
in these questions here, it's already telling you what it's reconstituted to.
Right.
So you can use desired dose in this formula because it already gave you what you have on hand in the end result of the problem.
So
And-
pretty much the when it says like that you're going to add however mLs, so is that like considered like the fluff of the question because you're not doing anything with that number, correct?
It's not fluff though, because that's what you're really doing.
Well, yeah, I know that
In
that's
real
what you're
life.
doing, but you're not putting that into the
Yes,
problem.
that information does not go into the formula.
See, I think
that's
that's my
correct.
problem, like adding all these numbers in into the formula.
And so this is what I'm trying to get you guys to realize. And let me just show you something real quick. In your book, okay, if you go into the point, can you see my screen going into the point?
Yeah.
You could go either spot. You can go to your actual book or you can go to that purple book you put on there, the fundamentals one. And if you go into student resources, okay, you'll see a little click down here for dosage calculation quizzes. Now, if you're just doing dose, okay, you want to click the first one. But if you're working on these drip factors, then you want to go to solving for rate. These ones will give you more of a direct question just so you can practice on that part. The reason why I use the other ones in Saunders is because I want you to get used to being able to read those questions, because a lot of times you're going to get the whole question and you know, it's a little bit different. Like if you look at these ones, you can see the question on my screen.
Right.
You see, it just gives you a straight question. How many mLs per hour does the nurse administer the IV fluid? In order to answer this question, you have to have two things, your mLs and your time in hours, because it's asking you mLs per hour. That's the only way you can do this problem. So you have 1,000 mLs and you're giving it over 8 hours. So what kind of answer and how are you going to get that answer? You're just going to take that 1,000 and divide it by 8. Right?
Right.
And you should get something like 125.
Right.
Right.
Okay, then you start going through more and you're like, okay, well, they're not all this easy, Miss Sue. How about this one?
See, I wish they were all that easy. That'd be all right.
Now, how do you do this one? This one says, how many mLs per hour does the nurse administer the IV fluid? So again, what do you need? You need your total volume in mLs
An
and
hour.
your total time in hours. But wait a minute, the time here is in minutes. So how am I going to get it into hours?
You gotta convert the minutes into hours. So would it be like 0.05 or 0.5?
It would be 0.5, okay, but how do you know that?
You got to divide the 30 by the 60, by the 30 minutes by 60 minutes.
That's correct, and it gives you the amount of time in hours. Does everybody understand that? Speak
Yeah,
now. Speak now. If you don't, this is
I
time to
understand
learn
that.
it.
I understand that part, but I don't know why I'm not looking at it. Like I know 30 minutes is a half an hour, so that'd be 0.5. I
Well,
don't know.
if you take 30 and divide it by 60, what does it give you?
0.5.
Okay, so that's how you get that. Because what if it said 45 minutes, or what if
Well,
it
then
said
I'd have to. Right.
what if it said 37 minutes?
Then you would have to divide.
Then now you're going to be confused because you know off the bat that 30 minutes is a half hour. You also know that 45 minutes is 3/4 of an hour.
Right.
But you don't know what 62 minutes is. You don't know what 61 minutes is. You don't know what 38 minutes is. So in those cases, you have to divide it by the total of minutes in an hour, and that will tell you the portion of an hour that it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so now if you take that 500 and divide it by 0.5, it's going to tell you how many mLs per hour you have to give this fluid in.
Gotcha. All right. Good.
And what'd y'all get?
Was it 1,000?
Yes. Now, does that make sense? Well, if I have 500 and I give it in an hour, that's 500 in an hour. If I want to give that 500 twice as fast, because 30 minutes would be twice as fast as an hour, right?
Right.
It makes sense that I would have to double it to give it in that period of time. How am I checking myself? Now, again, you know, here, if you look at the screen, you're going to see 3 different ways to do this math. All right. I like the simple way, so I use the formula way. And the formula might even look a little different than what I just said to you. Okay. I take my 30 and divide it by 60. That gives me a 0.5 because I need my time in minutes. And I know my volume is already 500. So I'm just simply taking my total volume, okay, which is 500, over my time in minutes, which I just said was 30, but now I got to convert that to an hour. So that's equivalent to 0.5 hours, right?
Right.
So when I take the 500 divided by the 0.5, that gives me 1,000. And that's my time. All right.
Yes.
I'm giving 1,000 mLs in an hour. Or 30 minutes, I'm sorry. My brain moves too fast for even me some days. All right, now look at this question, okay? What does the question ask me?
I just see your
We
white.
see your whiteboard. We don't see anything else.
All right, let me. So what's it say? mLs per hour, right?
Right.
Okay, so look at my information up there. What do I need out of that information to solve mLs per hour?
The total volume,
Which is?
300? No.
Okay, so what do we see behind the 300? We see
mg.
milligrams, right? Milligrams is always your strength. It's never your volume. Your volume is always going to be in mLs. So what is your total volume?
Uh, 50 milliliters.
50 mLs is your total volume, okay? And your time is in minutes, so you have to convert that to
Hours.
okay. So our total volume is 50 mLs, and our time in hours, we just said 30 minutes is equivalent to what?
0.5.
0.5.
0.5. So we have 50 divided by 0.5. And what'd you get?
100.
100.
See, rock stars, you got it. It just looks hard. It's not. Once you figure out what's what in the problem, what do I need, what do I throw away, you're good. What's the question ask?
All right, we got again, it's total volume, which is 100.
Okay. Over total time in hours. And again, 30
Overtime
minutes.
is 30 is a 0.5.
Okay, so you should have 100 divided by 0.5. That's how your problem should be set up. And don't look at it as 100 divided by 0.5. Look at it as my total volume divided by my total time in hours. Because when you do that, it sets the problem up for you. You don't have to wonder. You already know your total volume is always going to be in what?
mLs.
mLs.
And your time in this equation has to be in hours because it's asking you for mLs per hour. So what'd you get?
Uh, 200.
200, right. Oh my God, Miss Sue. Look at this question. Now what's it asking us? Can you see the question?
Yeah, I see it. All right, solid the dose rate.
So what's it ask? What's the question asking?
Drops per minute.
So for drops per minute, what do we need?
The total volume
Yep, the total volume
times over time in minutes.
over the time in minutes times
The
Drip
drop.
factor.
Drip.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
So our total volume is what?
75.
75. And what is our time?
Because it's over 1 hour, right?
It's 1 hour. Yep. So our time in 1 hour in minutes is what?
60.
Yep. So 70 divided by 60 times your 15.
18.75.
Okay, so it says round it to the
Oh.
nearest whole number.
I gotta read. That'll be
0.75 is 16.
18.75, you said it was, right?
And
Yeah.
it'll be
So
19.
So 19.
So 19, yeah. Arthur says.
Look at that, rock stars, you got it. Exactly what you did right there in the middle. Here's another one. See if you can do it on your own. Read what the question asks you first to set up your problem. I would write that problem down, like the actual formula, every time I do it, so that I memorize that formula. And then I don't have to wonder when I don't get all flustered when I get to the quiz. Because, you know, the quiz gives me a time frame in which I have to do this, and that makes me feel flustered and anxious, because now I got to get it done, or it's going to mark me a 0.
For 40 drop per minute.
40 drops.
40.
Look, you're rock stars. See, you got it. There's your formula in the middle. Let's go to something a little bit different. Oh, it doesn't want to move. It's not moving. You're going to move for me, screen. It's not moving. All right, let me just look at this quiz here. Did I cover all the ones that you guys wanted me to cover from the quiz?
Was that
So we
reconstitute?
did with the reconstitution. We did the IV push. We did all the have over needs. We did the units. Okay, there is one more on here we're going to do. Let me see if I can find the PowerPoint for this one. Let me just stop my share for a second. There was one about giving something over 15 seconds. So
Yeah, that was one that I like to do.
All right, can you guys see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, so with IV push meds, of course, they have a push time for a specific reason, and it's usually because, give me 1 second, guys. All right, All right, so if we push the medication too quickly, it could cause some sort of reaction. It could be painful. It could cause some sort of toxicity. So we always might have to push it a little bit slower. All right, so you might have to give it in increments, like you give 100. I mean, you give 1.25 mLs over 15 seconds, and it could even be, slowed down further if it needed to be. All right, so you're doing this IV push. You don't let go of the syringe while you're pushing it, and you push it through a clean port, okay? And you're giving these medications over time. So the first one we're going to look at is Reglan. So you have this order for Reglan. It's 10 milligrams. It has to be given IV push every 6 hours as needed. You have a vial that has metoclopramide, 5 milligrams per 1 ml. Okay. It doesn't have to be diluted, but it has to be pushed over at least 1 minute. So first you have to figure out what is the total dose ordered. Okay. For 1 IV push is 10 milligrams. All right. And then what you have on hand. Okay. So what you have on hand is 5 milligrams per 1 ml. And they just set this up to do the cross math. So if you see that, you can see how it's set up there. So now you have to figure out how many mLs to push every 15 seconds. All right, so you see how they have that laid out. So the first thing they're doing is figuring out how many mLs to push for 60 minutes. And then you actually, for 60 seconds, and then you actually can divide that dose into 15 seconds. Does that make sense to you? So they multiplied across the top, right? They're given 2 mLs for each dose, okay? Because what they have on hand is 5 milligrams per 1 ml. So they put the ml on top and the milligrams on bottom, because when they do that, the milligrams cross each other out.
Okay.
So they multiplied the 1 times the 10, and they got 10 divided by 5, okay?
Yeah.
So let's see if I can do it on.
So, Miss Sue, they're not doing D over H with this one. It's just cross
You
multiplying.
are kind of doing D over H. So what you have on hand here is the 5 milligrams. That's what's on hand, but you're cross multiplying it because you have to break it down. I think there's another way I could do this. I just have to figure it out. All right. So just bear with me for a second. I just want to see if I do the math here right, if I get the answer that you guys have on the quiz, doing it my way. Okay, So myself, if you do D over H, okay, this is how I would do the question that you guys have, okay? You guys have ordered, and I'm going to use the actual question for this just because I think it's going to be simpler. And then we'll go over a couple other ones if we can find them. All right, so for this one, you had ordered verapamil, okay? 7.5 milligrams, and it was IV push over 3 minutes. Let me see if I can do this by hand so you can actually read it. All right, you had 7.5 milligrams, and it was IV push over 3 minutes. Now, what you had on hand was 2.5 milligrams per ml. So the first thing I would do is divide the 7 by the 7.5 divided by 2.5 milligrams per ml. And that should give you
3.
okay, 3. All right, now remember that's over 3 minutes. So now you got to divide that by 3. Okay, and that gives you 1 ml per minute. Okay, now because there's 4 of those 15-second intervals in 1 minute, I would take that 1 and divide it by 4. And that should tell you how much you're giving in 15 seconds, which should come out to 0.25.
Where did you get the 4? I'm sorry. So
Because
you,
there's because in 1 minute, look, if you took 60 and divided it by 15, right?
mhm,
It equals 4, right? There's 4 15-second intervals
okay, yeah,
in
okay.
a 60-minute period.
I see what I did wrong. Okay. So all right, so you did the 7.5 over 2.5, and that will give you 3. Then you divided that 3, you put that over the minutes. And
Right,
it
because
was
we
just
had 3 minutes. So
right.
when I did the 7.5 divided by 2, that gave me my total dose, which was 3 mLs. But I have to give that 3 mLs over 3 minutes.
Right.
So if I divide that 3 mLs by 3, then that means I'm giving 1 ml per minute. Now I have to break it down even further and determine how many mLs I have to give in 15 seconds. So every 15 seconds, I'm going to give a quarter of an ml. Remember, it said hold on to the syringe. So you're going to hold on to the syringe, and every 15 seconds, you're going to push 1/4 of that solution.
I
And
think,
another 15 seconds, another quarter. And you're
and I
going to do
was
that until you give it over that full 3 minutes.
okay because I didn't break it down. I converted the 3 minutes into 90 seconds.
I'm going to send you guys the PowerPoint I have because that just gives you the analysis method. Okay. I like the simple math, but I wanted you to have the long method in case you don't understand the simple math. All right.
Yeah. All right.
I don't know if I could find one in here that I might be able to find one in another math one I have, but it might take me a minute. Let's see if we can find one in your book. That's like that. course, I won't be able to find one because I want one. Let's see, dose. Might be able to get one on here. You guys should try this site if you haven't. Yeah, I'll probably just have to make one. Okay, so
What site were you looking at?
that's called dosagehelp.com. It's a
Okay.
free site. Okay, so let's say your dose is for 3.5 milligrams, and what you have on hand is 1.5 milligrams per 2 mLs. Okay, and you're giving it over 1 minute, and it asks you how much would you give in 15 seconds. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is take your dose on hand, which is the 3.5. All right, that's your order. Right, you're going to divide that by the 1.5. And multiply that times 2. And what'd you get?
4.6666.
Okay, so you got 4.666. So we would multiply that times, I'm sorry, we would, that's your total dose for 1 minute. Okay, so now you have to divide that by 4, right? Because there's 4 15-second intervals in a 1 minute period. And that should have gave you something like 1.16. So we would round that up to 1.2. Everybody understand that? We good with that? Okay. All right, anything else on math you guys need me to cover?
Well, they usually always tell you that they want you to push it over 15 seconds.
If that's what they want you to calculate it out to.
So they'll always tell you what, something like that.
In that particular question, it actually said, calculate how much to give every 15 seconds.
Okay, so they'll tell you.
So it gave you the ordered dose. It gave you the dose you had on hand. And it told you how long you were going to give it over.
Okay.
So, you know, you have to calculate that total dose, and then you have to break it down into the 15 seconds.
Okay. Okay, I understand that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm going to start with chapter 5 today. Chapter 3 and 4, I will still try to get up. I haven't got them up on the server yet. My bad, but life is just crazy. All right, so we're talking about cultural diversity, how things vary amongst different cultures, okay? And something that you really need to know in order to be able to provide respectful care and what we call culturally competent care. So understanding the different racial and ethnic origins, religion, you know, how does it affect people's physical size, age, gender, different sexual orientations, disabilities that and how they affect people, socioeconomic and occupational status and geographical locations and how those all affect different people. Cultural diversity itself is defined as the coexistence between the ethnic, the biological sex, the racial, the socioeconomic groups, and they include but are not limited to people who vary in religion, language, physical size, sexual orientation, age, disability, occupational, and geographic location. Cultural itself is an integral part of health and illness because those cultural values or beliefs that we understand and learn across families and communities affect the way that people accept healthcare and different ways that we may have to incorporate our care so that it works, you know, for them. So culture itself is defined as a shared system of beliefs, values, and behavioral expectations that helps provide some social structural guidelines for daily living. And it provides us with a body of knowledge, a body of beliefs, a body of behavior. It defines different roles, how we interact with people within the community and also those that are not within our community, as well as families. And it also helps others understand like how we come across as far as our attitude. And it also influences, okay, the way that we respond and the way that people respond to us. So it influences the way that people view us. It influences our expectations, our response, and because it's made up of different people and we have sometimes subcultures within cultures. So every single culture is not exactly the same. You can't stereotype one culture. Oh, everybody in this culture does this, because there's subcultures within those cultures. And sometimes once a culture navigates to a different area that they're not necessarily from, it can change again because it's going to start to pick up habits, especially with the younger people. They'll start to pick up habits and they'll start to assimilate the ways of that new culture that they're brought into. So is the following statement true or false? Culture includes beliefs, habits, likes and dislikes, customs and rituals learned from one's family.
True.
True.
True. Okay, good. So a subculture is just a lot of people that come in, they're members of that large culture, but they also have certain ethnic, occupational, or physical characteristics that may not be necessarily common to the larger part of that culture. Cultural assimilation or acculturation is when people come into a dominant culture and they start to pick up traits or they start to act like that dominant culture. All right, so that answer was true. Culture is a shared system of beliefs and values and behavioral expectations that provides social structure for daily living. It also includes beliefs, habits, likes and dislikes, and customs and rituals learned from the family. Subculture we just talked about, that's that large group of people within a dominant culture, okay, and they start to carry their own characteristics or traits that are a little bit different than the larger part of that culture. Dominant groups, these are usually the group that is in control. They're that major group of that culture. And so when the minority group comes in or moves in within that culture, they sometimes lose cultural characteristics because they start to do that cultural assimilation that I just talked about, picking up the attributes of this dominant group. The minority group is going to be that smaller group that exists within that dominant group. So assimilation, and I'm going over these carefully because you might see them on different exams. You want to know what they mean. So when we assimilate, we start to carry or pick up traits of other people. We replace our own values with those of the dominant culture. Cultural shock is when it's a strange experience or a different experience that we perceive as strange. Like if someone doesn't usually take pain medication, but they have a different way to experience pain, and we look at that pain as being weird in our culture, or we don't accept it, then that could present a case of cultural shock for them. It could actually cause them to feel uncomfortable or like they don't fit within our environment.
Ms. Loach, are you showing a PowerPoint because like your screen is black?
I'm sorry. Yes, I am.
Why can't I find it?
Can everybody else see it or no?
No,
I
I
don't
don't
see any
see it
copy.
either.
Okay, let me try it again. I thought I shared it. How about now?
Yes, we can see it now.
Okay. Which of the following occurs when members of a minority group living within a dominant group begin to blend in and lose characteristics that made them distinct? Which one?
Assimilation, is it C?
Assimilation. Yes, we assimilate, we take on. Okay, remember when you see a simulation like in the movies, or if you go on a ride like at Great Adventure and it says, oh, this is a simulation roller coaster, it acts like a real roller coaster, but it's not. So try to think of it like that. You act like part of that dominant group, but you're not really part of that dominant group, but you start to act like them, like your kids do. You know, what happens when you take your kids into a new environment? They go from eating the traditional types of foods that we grew up with our grandparents and all, and now they're eating McDonald's. Or, you know, if I'm in Japan, I might start eating the Japanese food. Okay, so we start to pick up those characteristics that other people have that live in that dominant culture. What is cultural imposition?
That's when you're trying to push your beliefs on somebody else.
Yeah,
Like they
sort
should-
of. Or you tell them that, oh, well, we don't do that here. When you're in Rome, you do as the Romans do, honey. You don't act like that here. You have to act the way we act. All right. And then cultural shock, remember, is when you're in that strange environment. It's strange and people really don't accept the beliefs that you have. And so it makes you feel uncomfortable. All right. And conflict could just be maybe your culture believes in one thing, but you want to believe in something else. And it's not really meshing with the grandparents or with your ancestors. They don't want to hear that. They want you to do what they want you to do based on what everybody else has always done, you know, with that group. They don't want to hear about your new ideas. All right, so cultural assimilation is when one's values are replaced by the values of the dominant culture. Imposition is the belief that everyone should conform to the belief system that's currently in place. Conflict is when you become aware of different cultural differences and you feel threatened and you act negatively. And shock refers to the feelings a person experiences when placed in a different culture. So ethnicity, this is a sense of identity within a collective cultural group. It's really based on the group members' common heritage. One belongs to a specific ethnic group, either through birth, through adoption of characteristics of that group. They generally share unique cultural and social beliefs and behavior patterns, including language, dialect, religious practices, music and political interest, food preferences, employment patterns. So ethnicity really talks about day-to-day life with family and friends in the community. And then race. This is usually used interchangeably with ethnicity, but they're not the same. When we talk about race, we talk about specific physical characteristics like the pigmentation of the skin, the statute of the body, certain facial or hair textures or features, and the blending of physical characteristics throughout centuries is now making it harder because now we have, races interacting with each other. So sometimes when you look at someone, you really can't tell by their features what race they are because they may be a mixture of more than one race. But, the 5 categories that fall under the federal standards are American Indian or Alaska Native, Asian, Black, African American, Native Hawaiian, or Pacific Islander, and white. So when they ask people, to identify their race, these are the standard categories that you're usually going to see on a form. Stereotyping, this is when we believe that everybody in the group is the same, and it could be positive or negative. And it includes things like racism, ageism, and sexism. All right, so if we are discriminating or we're putting everybody in the same group based on one of those classifications. Is the following statement true or false? Stereotyping occurs when people ignore differences in the cultures in which they live and proceed as if they do not exist.
False.
False.
That's cultural blindness. So that's false. That occurs when people ignore differences in the cultures in which they live and proceed as if they do not exist. All right. Stereotyping is when you believe everybody in the group is the same. All right. So in order to eliminate prejudice, first we have to be able to identify them. If people don't recognize that they're prejudiced, then they can't identify that, right? And people will deny it, right? They'll say stupid things like, oh, when they're trying to convince you, oh, all my friends are that way. All my friends are Black. All my friends are Indian. They'll, try to tell you things about themselves to prove it. But you really can tell by people's everyday actions whether they are or they aren't. Sometimes people try to dismiss their actions, but, you can't really. All right, cultural imposition. This is a belief that everyone should conform to the majority system. In other words, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. And you'll hear people say this all the time, right? You're in America, speak English. Cultural blindness. This is ignoring those differences, okay? You know they exist, but you ignore them or you choose to believe that they don't exist. With conflict, you're aware of the differences and you feel threatened. Sometimes people respond to this like by making fun of your beliefs or your traditions, and that might help them feel more secure. So that might indicate to you that that person has a cultural conflict if they're trying to, make themselves feel more secure by making fun of someone else. And then ethnocentrism, this is where you believe that your ideas are more superior than anyone else's. The term which describes what occurs when a nurse believes that their own ideas, beliefs, and practices are the best or superior to those of colleagues and patients is called what?
Ethnocentrism.
Yes.
D.
Ethnocentrism.
D.
Okay. Ethnocentrism. I know more sense than you do. I know more sense than you do. Ethnocentrism. Let me say it 3 times. I can't. So, different things affect influences on healthcare, physiological variations. How about response to pain? Okay. And this makes a huge difference because, like the elderly, a lot of elderly people won't admit to pain. Why? One, it's can be a sign of weakness, especially for men. Okay. For them, they feel like it's a sign of weakness if they admit to the fact that they're in pain. Other things that could influence that would be different cultures. Okay. So different cultures believe they're supposed to be in pain because God wants them to be in pain. And that's a religious thing. God wants me to suffer, so I'm not going to take the pain medication. All right. And so, that's going to make a difference in how they're going to respond to anything that you're trying to give them, and how you have to approach them, and how you have to treat them. Mental health. Okay, so when a person has developmental delays or certain psychiatric illnesses, they might not feel pain. And so they might do things like self-injurious behaviors because, that can affect the way that they see pain. It also could affect the way that they see illness, or their ability to care for their own illness, or to be able to understand what you're teaching them. Gender roles. So now we have a lot of different gender roles, and we have to approach everybody in sort of a non-gender sort of status. So we don't talk to them as if they're male or female or in between, but really we give a non-gender sort of role towards people. But definitely people respond to illnesses different. You already know that men and women respond to illnesses different. Traditionally, the woman, even all the way back into Florence Nightingale, has been the one to take care of the sick people in the home. We did have a couple of periods where there were some men, but mostly men that were in the hierarchy of the church that were like going to be like deacons and priests and stuff like that. They also took care of some people in the illness role, but it's not been a role of men traditionally to take care of sick people. And usually we always joke around, right, that, oh, I have the man flu, meaning that, if I have a cold, I can't move off the couch. That's something that, people always joke about because there's a difference in the way. A woman could be totally sick and she could have walk-in double pneumonia with a temp of 109, and, people still expect her to cook dinner and take care of the family. But, with guys, we kind of have that reverse role in America. When you're sick, we're going to still wait on you, even if we're sicker than you are. So, that's kind of how roles can play out. And some of that's changing now. Like traditionally, it's always been women to take care of the kids, but we see that role's changing now. There's a lot of men that are now stepping up to the plate, and a lot of women that are stepping down from the plate. So a lot of those roles are changing. Language and communication. So, if you can't communicate with someone, you obviously can't help them when they're ill. And also, it's not even just language of a different country, also educational level, because, you have to teach your patient at the educational level that they understand. And everything has to be according to their level of development. And then also communicating, does your patient have any disabilities for communicating? If they can't speak, then you're going to have to find a way to communicate with them, maybe a pencil and a piece of paper. If they can't hear, then you have to find another way to communicate with them. If they're blind, then you have to find different ways to teach and communicate with them. And if they're developmental delayed or they have a psychiatric issue, you may have to find different ways to communicate with them. Orientation to space and time. So everybody's level of space is different. In this country, most of the time, we like to have that 3 foot of space around us. 6 foot even now, right, in the virus environment. But with a lot of friends and families, that space is cut way down. Like, I don't mind some people being right in my face, and others, I don't want them in my face. So, you know, how does that apply to each person? Because when you're doing teaching with the patient, sometimes you have to be right in that space, right around them. And that might make certain populations feel very uncomfortable. Also, orientation to time. So you might see this in clinical questions, like what if you see a lot of patients, coming into the emergency room in an area that is not so economically stable. Why would those patients come into the ER as opposed to going to the clinic and making appointments with the clinic? Well, maybe it has to do with their orientation to time, and that clinic hours aren't meeting the time needs for that person. So, like, if I'm working during certain hours, obviously I can't afford to take off, especially if my economic status is already impaired. And I might be, if I'm an immigrant from another country, is my boss paying me to even take off? Because a lot of these people don't have benefits. And so, they have to be able to get to that clinic during hours when they're actually not working, or otherwise it's going to increase the population coming into that emergency room after hours, which is going to increase the amount of patients. It's going to increase the cost of care. So it takes away from the community. Food and nutrition. So how well I eat, how my diet, how does that affect my health? My familial support, how does that affect my health? And what other factors? So socioeconomic. Okay, if I'm an area where I can't get to healthcare, or I can't get to the same healthcare as you, or if I don't have insurance, I'm not going to be able to see the same doctors as you. How is that going to play a part on my healthcare? Okay, so we do see it happening. There is still a huge disparity in different populations versus another when it comes to healthcare that's available and physicians that are available. So it does play a factor in the treatment and in the cost of healthcare. Any questions on any of that?
No.
So, again, pain, okay? Everybody has different beliefs about pain. We have to believe that it's what the patient says that it is. We have to respect the patient's right to respond to pain in their own fashion or the own way that they do that. We don't stereotype their response to pain, okay? Because just because a patient's from that culture doesn't mean that they follow everything within that culture. We don't all follow everything within our cultures, right? So we can't expect that every patient we see also does that as well. Also, what you might see with that is patient's family may play a big part in whether that or not they take pain medication. Because, like, if my parents believe maybe my brother died from an overdose of heroin, okay, so now they think that anybody who goes on pain medication is automatically going to get addicted and become this heroin addict. They might interfere with my ability to take pain medication. Sensitive to nonverbal signs of discomfort. So, pay close attention to your patient's behaviors. Don't make assumptions. Look for subtle changes, okay, that might show that they're in pain or that something else is going on that maybe you don't see or recognize because it's not part of your culture. Poverty, okay, how does that play a part in healthcare? For one, if I live in a poor neighborhood and I come from, parents that don't have a lot of money, that can affect one, my diet and my nutritional status. Every day it can give me a sense of hopelessness, because if I see people, struggling and not being able to get out of that environment, how does that affect me and my attitude towards life? I also see that when the government tries to help these people, that they really don't give them enough to survive. They put me in an unfair predicament. They put me in a predicament where I could climb to the top if I cheat a little bit, or I could stay where I'm at forever if I don't. And so, how does that affect me as a person? Well, this is something we have to think about. Sometimes these people have to lie on their applications in order to get help. And business people do it every day. They lie on applications every day in order to get business loans. If they didn't, a lot of them wouldn't get those business loans. But yet the government threatens you if you lie on your application for financial aid, they're going to put you in jail. And that's scary. I don't want to go to jail, not just for trying to get help for my family. So sometimes you see these families doing other things that they shouldn't be doing. But, if you think about it realistically, if you give me $500 a month and cash and $500 a month in food stamps, and I have 3 kids and I'm a single mom, can I realistically make it? Not in the state of New Jersey unless I have Section 8. Okay, it's not going to happen because it's just not possible. Maybe if 3 or 4 of you guys move in together, then that might happen. But not one person, not in this state. You can't even find a place to rent for $500 a month. Unstable family structures. So with this, we talk about things like abuse. It could be verbal abuse. It could be things like neglect. It could be abandonment. The parents could be working people and be just abusive. Parents could have a substance abuse problem. There could be domestic violence. So it can happen in a number of ways. And then, and that's not limited just to poverty, but the unstable family structure can create this sometimes more in a family because the family structure starts to be torn down by the family's inability to meet their basic needs. And that can be, struggling with not making enough money, even though you're working around the clock, you're still not bringing home enough money to pay the bills and put food on the table. So it starts to tear down people after a while. And then decline in your self-respect, and then you start to pull back from community involvement. Is the following statement true or false? The healthcare system is a culture of its own, with nursing being its largest subculture.
True.
True.
All right, true. The healthcare system is a culture of its own, and nursing is its largest subculture. So, we have this subculture of our own that hopefully sooner or later people will start to respect more than what they do right now. Okay. And my reason for saying that is because in nursing, we still don't have a separate and developed doctorate program like some other areas, like medical, and actually like all other areas. Medical, there's only one thing you have to do to get a medical degree, to get a doctorate. In nursing, it's a little bit different. You have to, there's a couple different ways you can get it. So it needs to still become more organized. It still needs to grow more. Okay, so what kind of things would make me a cultural competent nurse? So knowing things about myself, what kind of biases, what kind of opinions, what kind of beliefs, disbeliefs do I have? Knowing about other people's culture and understanding it and learning about it. So that when someone comes in and I'm trying to treat them, I'm not trying to treat them like everybody else, because everybody's an individual and we want to treat them like that. Being able to accept and respect cultural differences. I don't have to believe it, okay? I don't have to follow it. I just have to accept it and respect it. Don't assume that the healthcare provider's beliefs and values are the same as the client's, okay? Because we know that's not true, right? How many of you have children?
I do.
How many of you have had arguments with your pediatrician about your values about raising your kids?
I have.
I definitely have. Okay. Like when I was a kid, my mom made my own formula. I didn't get formula from a store. So when my kids were born, I gave them the same formula my mom gave me. You wouldn't believe the crap I got from the doctors. Like, but you know, both my kids are here. They're both healthy. They were both raised on that. But you know, I believe that the doctors were probably getting a kickback from Similac and Enfamil and all that. And I gave my kid Enfamil one time, and she got so sick from it. I swore I would never give my kids formula again, and I never did. I also never gave my children baby food, with the exception of the fruits. Like if I had food on the table, that's what they ate. I would put it in a grinder or a blender and grind it up. You know, I heard a lot of crap from the docs about, oh, you can't give them this and you can't give them that. But you know, that's what my mom raised me on, and I know I'm crazy, but other than that, I think I'm okay. Might have made me a little crazy. All right. So, you know, not all healthcare beliefs are going to be the same as the client's. The doctor might have a different value than what the client does. And, you know, just like we as nurses have to respect that, you know, physicians are now learning that the same. You see with a lot of the younger doctors now, they're becoming more and more open to what the values of the patient are. The old school docs, not so much. Resisting judgmental attitudes, you know, it's okay that someone's different. They don't have to be just like you. I'm sure you're not exactly like your parents. You're not exactly like your grandparents. You've altered somehow a little bit away from some of those attitudes that they may have had to fit your own needs now as a parent. And even with your children, you'll find yourself altering some of those attitudes even more, because what do your kids say to you? Oh, you're old, mom. You don't understand. You don't know what we're talking about. It's different now. Kids are different now than they were when we were kids. No, they're not. It's all the same. They get away with more stuff, but it's really all the same. It's just what we've allowed to change and grow. Some things are different. Like when I was a kid growing up, you did something wrong, they knocked the crap out of you. You found out about 4 days later what you did wrong or what you got knocked the crap out of for. You know, today you hit a kid and what's going to happen? If somebody else sees you, you're probably going to jail for child abuse, right? Even though it's your kid. And should you hit them? You know, that's a matter of opinion. Sometimes a little swat on the butt doesn't hurt them, but you don't punch them in the nose. But some people might think that's okay. So, you know, it's what are you comfortable with? What is the patient comfortable with? And if you're not comfortable with what the patient's comfortable with, then you may have to step away from that patient, because you may reflect negativity towards that patient healing. And so that's why you have to be responsible for knowing what your own beliefs, your judgments are, and not passing that judgment along to those people. And if you can't separate those values, then you have to step away and let someone else take care of that patient who could. It might not be such a big thing when you're just talking about everyday values, but let's say you have to take care of somebody who's having an abortion and you know the person. And let's say the person has 6 kids and they sleep with, you know, 2-3 different guys a week, and you know all this. And every time they get pregnant, now their answer is, let me just go have an abortion. How are you going to feel about that? You know, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, unless you believe that it's okay for her to do that, you're going to have a difficult time, you know, dealing with that person and treating them with a certain self of respect, because you don't believe what their opinion was. And that can change the way, even though you really don't want it to, it can change the way you interact with someone. Cultural backgrounds, expectations and beliefs, the context of the encounter, all these things can affect. And then the agreement between the two people. So, you know, it's what do you agree with the patient? And that really should be based more on their beliefs. You can still have your beliefs and you can still believe in them. But, you know, I have to do this with my mom all the time, because, you know, like my mom's telling me last night, she has a sore that won't heal and she's putting cortisone cream on it. And I want to say, hey, mom, that's not really going to heal the wound, because that's not what cortisone cream is for. But in her mind, if I tell her that, it's going to be an argument. That's what it's going to be, because she's not going to believe what I say, regardless of how much education I have, because she believes what she believes. So your level of education isn't going to change that for someone. So have that cultural awareness. You want to have that knowledge of the person that you're taking care of. You want to be able to accommodate, you know, the different cultural practices that are in healthcare. You want to be able to provide respect and be non-judgmental towards that patient and their family roles and how they manage. You don't want to mandate changes. And if you need help, ask somebody for help. You know, ask a coworker, a colleague, look it up. So again, it's really just, you know, understanding the different beliefs, the different attitudes, and incorporating the knowledge of those beliefs. Okay. You don't have to incorporate the beliefs themselves, just the knowledge. And then, you know, talk to the healthcare provider. If your patient isn't willing or isn't going to cooperate with some kind of treatment because they don't believe in it, then talk to the healthcare provider and see if you can get something else in place that's going to help that family member or that patient. Any questions on that?
No.
Nope.
Okay, let's get another PowerPoint up here. We should be able to get through at least one more, maybe two. Let's see how fast we can go. I'm trying not to go too fast because, you know I'm kind of Speedy Gonzalez sometimes getting through these things. I'm going to try to start also doing a tutoring on Thursdays. I think from 6 to 8 is the time that I set. So for those of you that can't make it on the weekend, hopefully that will help some of y'all out. Okay, so this is chapter 6. This really talks about values, ethics, advocacy. Advocacy is when you help protect or support someone else, okay, or their rights. Modeling is when we engage in a behavior that we want other people to also engage in, okay, so we model for them. Morals, these are ethics, all right, and we're concerned with ethics about, you know, nursing, ethics about what constitutes right and wrong. Laissez Faire, this is when we kind of take a stance back and we allow other people to make decisions for themselves. Sometimes we can use different things like reward and punishment to help get different things met with patients, and then patients have to be responsible for the choices that we make, that they make, and we also as nurses have to be responsible for the choices that we make and take responsibility for it. So when we're born, we're not born with values. They're formed during a lifetime, which involves influences from the environment, family, and culture. A value system is simply an organization of values where each one is ranked among a continuum of importance. So it's ranked by which is most important in the system. Values influence beliefs about what we need as human beings, health and illness, how we practice our behaviors and our responses to illness. For example, we as people put a high value on health and personal responsibility, then we'll work hard to reach like certain fitness goals or stay healthy. So when you see people that are working out all the time and eating right and healthy, and they do it on a continuous basis, they have a high value for their health and their personal life, and they don't want to be ill. So that's why they put all this work into being physically fit. Some people attach more high or pertinent on relaxing, not exercising, eating what they want, enjoying life. So that'd be people like me who have, Dunlap's disease. My stomach has Dunlapped over my belt because I enjoy life and I'm not exercising all the time. So, what are your values and what do you expect, to see? And this is how, you're going to raise your kids. This is how you're going to raise your family. And this is how we teach people how to do things. Now, we use modeling. So we use this as parents. We use it as teachers. And sometimes we use it as employers, okay? And people learn what high or low value means by observing us as that model. So, sometimes we even do this with sports figures, right? You want the sports figures to act a certain way, or TV wants the sports figures to act a certain way because Nike actually is the one that wants the sports figures to act a certain way, or Adidas because the sports figures represent their shoes. So they pay this sports figure X amount of dollars to model and show their shoes off to kids because, if Kobe Bryant wears these shoes, then my kid will want to wear them. If Michael Jackson wears these shoes, Michael Jordan wears these shoes, my kid will want to wear them. So I want Michael Jordan to act good, or I want Kobe Bryant to act good, because if my kid wants to wear his shoes because he wears them, then my kid's going to want to do other things that he does. Even though it's really my responsibility as the parent to model these kids, they want to put the responsibility on other people that the kids value because they can get the kid to connect with this person and do what they want them to do. So that's why when we have people that are considered role models, we want them to do behaviors that are socially acceptable, not unacceptable. Even though that's not really their responsibility, this is how society puts it on them. All right. So if we use a laissez faire approach, then that would be like, that one kid in the classroom who, everybody wants to go to their house and hang out because their dad's not home on a Friday night or their mom's not home on a Friday night. So we can go there and have a party. And even if their mom or dad does come home, they don't care. Like there could be alcohol there, there could be boys there or girls there. They don't care because they're what we call laissez faire. They let everybody make their own decision for what they want to do. Now, the only thing about laissez faire is if you have a really good group of disciplined people, you can use this approach. Like, if I were to allow my nurses at work to do what they want, I have a certain group of nurses that I could let go laissez faire because I know when I come in tomorrow, everything that I expect to be done is going to be done because that's the way they operate. But you can only use this if you have people that are really disciplined and that take their own self-direction and do what they're supposed to do. And then we know about rewards and punishments. And again, now we use a different type of system. When I was a kid, your reward was you didn't get your booty smacked. Your punishment was you did get your booty smacked. So now today, the rewards are usually things like you can have your phone, you can have your game bucks, but if you don't do it, you can't have your phone, you can't have your game bucks, or you can have timeout. So, it's just associating those values. And, this works really good with kids. If you teach them chores and stuff and you give them a reward for doing those chores, it teaches them responsibilities. It also gives them a choice to make a choice. So is the following statement true or false? A child is born with values and forms new values during a lifetime from information from the environment, family, and culture.
True.
So it's false, right? We're not born with
False.
values.
False.
Yeah, we're not born with values.
not
We
born with
learn those values, right? We actually learn a lot of stuff from our parents. We not only learn values, but we learn biases and prejudices, right? And then we form our own opinions as we grow up. We either form the same opinions that our parents have, or we form others. When I was a kid growing up, you were instructed that you will have the same opinions as your parents. So if your parents were prejudiced, you were expected to be prejudiced. If your parents were Republican, you were expected to be a Republican. You couldn't go against those values. Now things are a little bit different. Children are allowed to make some of their own decisions when it comes to those kind of things. Three main activities of the valuing process. Okay, choosing. That means that you're able to freely choose. Treasuring. This is pride and happiness, and you announce, this is what I choose. And then acting, where you take your choice and you actually incorporate that into your behavior on a routine basis. All right. So you routinely value this. It's not like, oh, I'm here for a week, so I'm going to act like this for a week, and then next week I'll act differently. Professional values provide the foundation for nursing practice, and they guide the nurses' interactions. And so, nursing school, part of this is teaching you how to be a professional and act professionally all the time and act with pride. Okay, you're supposed to know the difference between right and wrong and act that way whether someone's watching or not. And that's what gives us, that high ethical value out there, because people recognize that there is no 5-second rule when you drop the pill. Someone's not watching or not, you don't put that pill back in the patient's mouth, right? It fell on the floor, you got to discard it. Altruism, this is where we talk about the welfare for others, but it's also reflected by your concern as a nurse. Are you able to go out of your own comfort zone to advocate for your patients? And would your instructor say that you're really committed to your patient, that that's your primary commitment? But sometimes doing altruism can also benefit you. Like you might do something like show your patient how to do a dressing change, okay? And then in the process of showing that, it improves your self-confidence and your ability to do that better. So, that's also an example of altruism, where it makes you a better nurse by doing something for your patient. Autonomy is the right to self-determination, meaning I have the right to make my own decisions. Okay, so I have the right to refuse medications if that's what I choose to do. And as a nurse, you need to allow me that. Autonomy also could be about you as the nurse. You can make some decisions autonomously, right? Like, your patient comes in and they're dehydrated and they're able to drink. Maybe you could go ahead and start pushing or encouraging those fluids. So, or your patient just came from surgery and they need to get up and start moving around. So you're going to start helping them reposition, turn, or possibly ambulate. Human dignity, this is being able to respect others, their uniqueness, who they are. And it's not only just being courteous and polite, it's also reflected when you respect the person's values and their decisions and their choices. And integrity, acting in accordance with the code of ethics, okay, whether somebody's watching or not. You have to give honest information. You document care accurately. So if you made a medication error, you admit to it, you document it, you know, you tell your instructor or you tell your charge nurse so that we can monitor that patient. And you also help remedy errors that are made by other people. And then you demonstrate accountability by your own act. Okay, I screwed up, so I'm going to take, you know, accountability for that. And then social justice, that's upholding the legal and humanistic values for everyone, assuring equal treatment to all. Okay, so you're doing things to make sure that everyone gets the same equal treatment all the time. And you'll have to do that anyway as a charge nurse, as a boss. Which value involves acting in accordance with an appropriate code of ethics and accepted standards of practice? So it's actually integrity. Integrity involves acting in accordance with the code of ethics and standards of practice. So altruism is when you're concerned about the welfare of others. Autonomy is the right to self-determination, making your own decisions. Human dignity is respect for the worth and uniqueness of others, including individuals and or populations. And social justice is that upholding of moral, legal, and humanistic principles equally for all. So there's a few types of ethics. Okay, bioethics. This talks about life sciences or the field of life sciences. Ethics itself is a study of the principles of right and wrong conduct. So when we look at ethics, that's what we're talking about, the difference between right and wrong. Sometimes they talk about good and evil. Okay. So when we talk about bioethics, we talk about life sciences, like what kind of person should I be in order to live a moral life? We also talk about what type of duties or obligations to other people. So how do my actions affect what I do for other people? And what do I owe the common good or the public interest in my life as a member of society? So, you know, how do I represent who I am as a person? Nursing ethics, this is a subset of bioethics, and it talks about ethical issues that arise in the practice of nursing. Also analyzing, when we, you know, use our analyzation of different things, we use that to make or evaluate ethical judgments. Okay, we also take responsibility for managing care. We have to be prepared to recognize the different ethical dimensions of our practice. We have to be competent in our ethical decision making. Sometimes ethical issues are encountered by us in daily practice, and this includes containing costs. Okay, so anything that could jeopardize patient welfare, including life beginning and ending decisions, breaches in patient confidentiality, incompetent, unethical, or illegal practices would all be incorporated under ethical theories. So for ethical theories or frameworks, these talk about how we should live and why. And there's a couple. Utilitarian, this is right or wrong of an action. So we do a right action because we think God will like us more for it. Or we do a wrong action because we think that our boss will give us a raise for it. Deontologic, this is an action that's right or wrong based on a rule. So it doesn't matter what the consequences are going to be. So I do the right thing because it's the rule. The rule says this is why I have to do it. So it doesn't matter what I'm going to get in the end out of doing it right. Like if I do everything the right way, obviously I might get a raise because my boss will see that I'm competent and all that. But I'm not doing it because of that. I'm doing it because that's the rule. And the same thing if I do something wrong, okay? Then we have the feminist ethics, and this is critiques used in patterns of oppression and domination in society that affect women and the poor. So it's an ethical approach that's popular among nurses, both female and male. And it ranges from things like biological sex-related inequities to concern for those that aren't very well off. Nurses work in a feminist framework to promote social policy that reflects a fundamental trust in women. And it also is recognition that all persons deserve the opportunity to make a legitimate choice about conditions that affect their life and are deserving and respect of whenever they exercise such facilities. So, you know, it's allowing, you know, women to make those choices of their own. All right. Remember before that, you know, women have sometimes been oppressed in certain decisions or have not been allowed to make certain decisions based on the fact that they are a woman. All right, we already talked a little bit about the utilitarian. So just remember that utilitarian means the choice you made was based on the consequence or the outcome of that choice. Okay. And deontologic is based on the actual rule, regardless of what the consequences are. We talked about autonomy a little bit. This is allowing the right of patients to make their own choices. Now, non-malfeasance. Some of these aren't so easy to pronounce. Okay. This is you go out of your way to avoid causing harm to the patient. So why do we wash our hands? Because we know that if we wash our hands, we won't introduce bacteria to the patient. So if you purposely, or you walked into the room and you're like, well, I'm not going to wash my hands because I don't feel like taking the time to do it right now. I'm in a hurry. Okay, that would be actually malfeasance, right? Because you could cause harm to that patient because you didn't do something as simple as hand wash to avoid that. Beneficence, this gives benefit to the patient. Justice, make sure that you're giving social justice or acting fairly towards all patients. Fidelity, okay, you know that infidelity is when you break a promise, right? If you have infidelity in your marriage, you broke that promise and you stepped out with somebody else. Fidelity means you kept your promise. You tell the patient, I'm coming back after meds to talk with you, but I'll wait till after meds so I can sit down and have a conversation with you and spend an appropriate amount of time with you. All right, and then you keep that promise and you come back. That's fidelity. Veracity, this is accountability for keeping things. It means truthfulness, okay? But also that you're accountable, that you keep things private and confidential for the patient. Okay, characteristic approaches for care. Everything should be centralized towards that caring relationship. The patient they have to feel that you care about them, that your concern is about them, not the decisions that they made or not the things that they do, right? You like them for themselves. Now, you might not like a decision that they made, and sometimes you could even say that to the patient, like, hey, I like you, but I don't like your behavior right now. Or I like you, but I didn't care for the choice that you made. And that is really still promoting dignity and respect for the patient as a person, but saying that you might not like some things that they engage in, especially in the psychiatric world. You know, you might see this a lot. Pay attention, okay, to how that person is acting. Is there things in the dynamic that's changing them? And then cultivate, you know, where you respond to other people and how they act. Cultivate that type of environment that makes the person feel like they're important, that you respect them, that, you know, what you're doing is about them. And then you might have to redefine some of your moral skills, okay, to include some of these virtuals or these virtues, all right? Because maybe you're not as ethical as you should be. Maybe sometimes when people aren't looking, you do things. Maybe you don't always keep your promise. Maybe you don't always do everything that could prevent harm to the patient, all right? You broke sterile field putting a catheter in, but you didn't go grab a new one because you didn't think you had time, or you just didn't want to take the time. So, you know, how can you change your ways and be a better nurse? So, you know, it's not just how we talked, but how we practice, okay, based on the professional standards of ethical conduct and our values. We have to cultivate those virtues of nursing, not only in ourselves, but we want to model those and role model those for other people that work with us. So we want to keep that environment. Our environment shouldn't be negative or nasty, or I don't want to help you, or I can't trust you. And if you act professional, then other people will start to act professional around you. You should know your codes of conduct, okay, and your ethics and your standards of profession. So you can find the Code of Ethics under the International Council of Nurses Code of Ethics. There's a little link in your book on page 105 that would take you there. The reason why we have the Code of Ethics is because it helps us to understand what the obligations and duties of us as a nurse is. It also makes us understand that these ethics are not negotiable, that they have to occur within us in order for us to meet what we should be as a nurse. It's also an expression of our understanding of what we commit to in society. And you even take an oath to this, right, when you graduate from nursing school and you take that Florence Nightingale oath. If you follow the International Council of Nursing Guide and study the standards under each element, then you can reflect on the standards and understand what, not only what it means to you, but what it means to nursing in general. You can discuss this code with your coworkers and with others, and you might want to when you become a charge nurse on the floor and you're dealing with, you know, other people that are working under your license and that you're responsible for. You can use examples, all right, and also work in groups to clarify ethical decision making and reach a consensus on what your expectations are for people's standards or ethical conduct. And then you can collaborate with other professionals to apply those standards. The 7 basic Bill of Rights for the registered nurse is you have to be able to practice in a manner that fulfills the obligations to society and those who receive nursing care. So big shoes to fill here. Practice in an environment that allows you to act in accordance with professional standards and legally authorized scopes of practice. So in order to follow that scope of practice, you have to know your scope of practice. Work in an environment that supports and facilitates ethical practice in accordance with the Code of Ethics. Again, you can find the link to that Code of Ethics in the International Council of Nurses on page 105. There's a link to your book. work in an environment that supports and facilitates ethical practice in accordance with the code of ethics, and then freely and openly advocate for yourself and for your patients without fear of retribution. So, you know, in the environment that you work in, if a nurse comes up and says, you know, that she had a medication error, of course, we don't want somebody to have a medication error, but we do have to support and applaud someone when they come forth and they do something, and they admit, you know, to their wrongdoings. We don't want to applaud that they made an error, but we want to applaud them for the fact that they came forward and that they're letting us know and they're protecting that patient. Now they're actually advocating for that patient, and they're not worried about the retribution from doing that because they understand that their patient could die. That would actually cause more retribution if you didn't tell. So most of the time, most facilities are fairly forgiving as long as you're not under the influence or doing something crazy like that, and you're following the guidelines and you just make a mistake. It's when people don't follow policy and procedure and they go along and start making mistakes and stuff, and that's when they tend to get themselves in trouble. You should receive fair compensation for your work that's consistent with your knowledge, your experience, and your professional responsibilities. Now, I see a lot of nurses, they'll, you know, go and get their license and then they'll work in a different title than a nurse. I wouldn't suggest that you ever do that, because under law, even if you're working under a different title, if you have a nursing license and something happens to somebody, you're pretty much responsible. So work within your title and with the tools that you're given. And if somebody's not giving you the tools or the respect that you deserve, don't work there. Your license isn't worth it. You work too hard to get it. Practice in a work environment that's safe for yourself and your patients. Negotiate conditions of your employment. So, you know, you can negotiate conditions if you have the knowledge and everything. So, you know, this is where when I say to you, you have to eat it, sleep it, drink it. When you look in the toilet, nurse and poop better look back at you. When you treat yourself that way as a nurse, then you can negotiate the conditions. But if you're half stepping and you don't know a lot of stuff, it's going to be hard for you to negotiate your conditions of employment because you're still following along with everybody else. You're not a leader, you're still just a follower. And when you become an RN, you need to step out and be, you know, separate yourself from others and be a leader. So the Moral Distress Project, this project was created to educate, inform, and destigmatize moral distress. Nurse leaders are expected to explore strategies and help develop moral resilience and support ethics practice. This executive summary resulted in a consensus on recommendations for addressing the moral distress and building moral resilience in 4 areas: on practice, education, research, and policy. So as a nurse, you know, our ethical experience comes from many different ways. We have 2 types of ethical problems that we're commonly faced with, ethical dilemmas and moral distress. In the ethical dilemma, all right, 2 or more clear morals apply, but support mutually inconsistent courses of action. In moral distress, you know the right thing to do, but your personal or institutional factors make it hard for you to do those things. When we're not able to translate our ethical judgment into an action, then our integrity is compromised. So we have to have the sound skills and the ability to be able to engage in ethical reasoning and resolve ethical dilemmas and moral distress. There is in your book a figure 6.1 on page 106 that kind of talks about this and helps you to get through it. So, you know, you want to ask if you feel distressed or if you're upset, is anything causing you to feel uncomfortable about something that you have to do within your team, okay? If there is a moral distress there or present, then you want to figure out a way to resolve that. All right, so prepare yourself, ask yourself questions like, what do you believe? Why is this important for you to do this? And is there some way that it can be changed, or that, you need to make some declaration, okay? So if you are distressed, then you have to validate those feelings, okay? You have a professional obligation to act, and you have to admit that you have this moral distress, okay? Because you don't want to act in a case where you have that. All right, and then this way you can preserve your integrity and you can preserve your authenticity. So if you have a source of distress, identify it. Is it a personal source that you have with someone that works there, or is it an environmental? So is it something because of something that you have with someone else there, or something that you're personally feeling, or is it because of a facility rule or environment? How severe is it? Is it severe enough that it's causing you problems with working or with making decisions? Okay, and then are you able and ready to act on it? Okay, you recognize there's an issue, but maybe you're ambivalent, so you're going back and forth. You don't know which way you need to turn. Okay, then you look at your risks and your benefits, and you make a decision, and you create an action plan, and then you do it. And this way, now you're able to preserve your integrity and your authenticity. For developing moral resilience, you want to cultivate good relationships. Be able to accept change, because change is going to happen all the time. We can't stop change from happening. We can respond. We can change the way that we respond to it. Crisis is going to happen. We can't stop it sometimes, but we can stop our reaction to it. We can change the way that we react to it. Okay. And we can nurture a positive view of ourself, taking care of ourselves, and we can keep things in perspective. Again, the ethical dilemma, this is where we have two or more clear moral principles that apply, but support mutually inconsistent courses of action. So we have two moral principles, and they're both good moral principles, but one says do one thing and one says do another, and you're not sure which one you should follow. Okay, that's ethical dilemma. Ethical distress is when you know the right thing to do, but either some personal value or some institutional value makes it hard for you to make that choice. So a good example of this would be like PPE. Okay, so with you're the charge nurse, and you know that you're taking care of patients that are positive with COVID. Okay, and when you go into work, okay, you have two masks sitting there. One is a surgical mask and one is a N95. Okay, your boss tells you that you're to give everybody a surgical mask, even though you know that you have nurses going into that room with that COVID positive patient. Okay, now the right thing to do is what? Give them the KN95, right? And I'm sure some of you have already faced this. But the policy or coming from your boss is that you're not giving anybody a KN95 right now. So which one do you go with? If you give out those KN95s, you're going to have to face your boss. If you're giving people going in those positive rooms a surgical mask, you're going to have to face those nurses. So who are you going to face? So again, you know, is it causing you distress? Okay. Chances are, if it's something that your boss wants you to do, but you're not in agreement with it, because it could cause harm to your employees or to the patient, that is going to cause you a lot of distress. It could cause you a lot of distress too. Maybe you really are Catholic and you really have a strong disagreement with abortion, but here this person is in there trying to get an abortion. Now, when could that be a moral distress issue? Well, or an ethical distress issue. Let's say that you're Catholic and you don't believe in abortion at all, okay? But the person gets pregnant and they're pregnant because of incest or rape. So now you have ethical distress, right? Because on one aspect, you were taught that you don't believe in this abortion. But yet, if this girl has this baby, it's going to be her father or her uncle's baby, or it's somebody that raped her. So that is ethical distress. Do you see how both of those decisions could be the right choice or the right course of action? And some people may say, no, the abortion's wrong no matter how you look at it because that child's from God. All right. But other people say, no, that child's from the devil because a demon impregnated her, because anybody who would do something like that is a demon, not from God. So it could put a lot of ethical distress there. Okay. So how do you eliminate that? How do you eliminate that distress? All right. So this is some ways that you can do it. Tell whether the following statement is true or false. A nurse who is dedicated to providing culturally competent care to her patients finds herself without the resources to communicate with a patient who speaks in a different language. This problem may result in an ethical dilemma for the nurse. True or false? What do you think?
I kind of feel like it's true because she knows probably that she has to have a translator, right? If she doesn't have one, is that what it's asking? Like that type of,
Well, she would have to have a translator if she can't communicate, right?
yeah.
And if she's dedicated to providing culturally competent care, it's going to be an issue if she can't communicate with that patient, because how can you provide culturally competent care if you can't communicate? But let's see what the author says. Okay, false. This problem may result in ethical distress for the nurse. Ethical distress occurs when the nurse knows the right thing to do, but personal or institutional factors make it difficult. So in this case,
Oh, did it asked, it was, oh my God. Yeah, I didn't read the question the right way.
so it asked about ethical dilemma. So remember, dilemma is more about your own personal values, okay?
Right.
Whereas distress is when you have the company's values, okay?
Okay.
So distress is when your personal or institutional factors make it difficult, and dilemma is when two principles apply. So remember, dilemma was the one I used with the example of abortion.
Right.
Where dilemma is both answers could be right. Okay.
And then the distress is because she, wanted to do the right thing, but is it because she didn't have?
Either personally or institutionally, she couldn't do it. So she doesn't have the resources. If she doesn't have the resources, that means she doesn't have a translator. So who would be responsible for the translator? The facility, right?
Right.
So the facility didn't give her the resources. That is what would make the difference here. With
Okay.
the other one, with the ethical dilemma, okay, remember that both choices could be right, but they're inconsistent with each other. So like I said, in the abortion situation, where the choice could be to have the baby or not have the baby.
Right, and that was her dilemma because of the beliefs that she has.
Either choice could be right?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
you could say, go ahead and have the baby because you were raped, but the
Mhm.
child is a child of God, it doesn't matter. Or don't have the baby because abortion is wrong no matter what the reason is.
Okay, I understand that now.
You can use the nursing process to help make ethical decisions. So you gather the data and you assess it. You diagnose, so you make a plan, identify your options, think about the ethical problem, make a decision. All right. Now, once you made the decision, before you even implement it, think about what my outcome's going to be. If I make this decision, what's my outcome going to be? And then once you think about what your outcome's going to be, then you can make that decision to go ahead and either implement it or not implement it. And then once you implement it, then you're going to go back and evaluate that decision. So here's some examples of things that could cause, ethical problems: paternalism, deception, privacy, confidentiality, scarce nursing resources, okay, valid consents or refusals, conflicts concerning new technology, like new ways of evidence-based practice that maybe haven't been put quite into use yet. Other examples: unprofessionalism, incompetent nursing care, unprofessional or illegal nursing practices, short-staffed or whistleblowing, beginning of life issues, and end of life issues. A nurse attempts to obtain an order for a feeding tube for an anorexic teenager who refuses to eat. What is the term for the ethical problem this nurse is experiencing?
Is that one on paternalism? Let me read it again.
More than 150 Brinks has been trusted with money. Now, Brinks introduces the Brinks Money Investor Card to help protect what matters most to you. But having confidence that your money is safe matters most. Brinks can help.
Confidentiality.
Would it be E?
When having control,
Okay, it is E.
trust Brinks.
Paternalism occurs when the nurse acts for the patient without consent to secure good or prevent harm. Deception occurs when the nurse deceives the patient for a perceived benefit. So deception would be like, let's say you had narcotics and your patient was supposed to get a narcotic for pain and you gave him Tylenol and you took the narcotic for yourself. Patient confidentiality is questioned when a patient's confidence may lead to harm. Allocation of scarce nursing resources and advocacy in a market-driven environment involve patient harm due to inadequate staffing or finances. All right, so ethic committees, they are formed to help provide education, help make policies. They can review different cases and look at the outcome for those cases and see if there are different outcomes or different things that we should have done. They can help us to consult with both our nurses and the patients and sometimes outside people. They can help us do research occasionally. Just want to see if I missed anything here. All right, so we advocate because we need to make a primary commitment to the patient. It helps us prioritize for the good of the individual rather than society. It helps us evaluate competing claims of patient autonomy and patient well-being. And then as an advocate, we have to represent our patients. We have to promote the patient's right to act for themselves. Okay. Sometimes we have to whistleblow. Okay. If the company we're working for isn't doing things the right way, sometimes we got to tell on them. And sometimes we have to be a lobbyist. Sometimes we have to go into the courts and fight for our patients' right by being politically active, knowing what our patients need, and trying to provide those things for them. Any questions?
No.